Good morning. My name is Chris Riegel. I'm the founder and CEO of Stratacache. We, Stratacache, specialize in the in-store digital piece of the world. We've been doing this for 24 years. Earned our stripes in the Walmart 2.0 Smart Network in 2016, which was 550,000 screens. So you get to learn in the toughest, most aggressive environment. That being said, today we manage about 3.2 million screens globally and deliver over $2 billion in revenue to our customers around the world. Our job really is to drive good customer journeys and conversions in store while increasing the top line and the monetization of those experiences for our partners. In general, the use case of in-store media is now moving from a 1.0 network, as we would call it, of impression networks to 2.0 networks. Those 2.0 networks are sensor-based and sensor-driven networks, much more intelligent networks and much better targeting around that data set. So the evolution of these networks is all about bringing in better sensor, better information, and better targeting around that customer, and how to drive compliant networks with biometrics, with GDPR. It's very, very key today to be able to drive a personalization strategy, to drive a messaging strategy with that customer that's not overstepping and capturing information that you should not be capturing. Specifically, we're also seeing around the world FMCG and CPG companies saying to retailers, and I'm in Dayton, Ohio, I'm 42 miles away from Procter & Gamble headquarters. We have frequent discussions where they're saying, we want smarter networks. We want the same metrics in store that we're getting online. How do we drive better examples of that? How do we drive more information into that in-store example? So as we move on the network side, retailers garnered $88 billion in global revenue last year. This year will be over $101 billion, or 18% of global digital advertising. Today in the US, retail media is larger than broadcast television. That will continue to accelerate on a global trend. I'll be talking in the presentation a little bit also about the new Leviathan that's coming on stage, which is streaming, and the impact of streaming in these networks. UK e-commerce and EU and global e-commerce growth is kind of stalled. So when you look at retail media networks and you talk about .com, mobile, you've kind of hit a plateau. That was a rocket ship straight up during COVID. Post-COVID now it's stalling and it's starting to go a little bit lower. We're actually seeing in the online, in the mobile environment, decreases in advertising revenue in many sectors. However, physical stores are still 70% of all transactions. So that's still really where the money is within the network space. US has seen a boom in retail media networks in the last 10 years. UK is not far behind. As we look at this from a global perspective, we're in 28 countries around the world. It's fascinating to see the differences on either side of the Atlantic. In the US, retail media networks tend to be much more shopper conversion networks and in-store customer engagement networks, audience-driven networks. In the UK, there's much more of an out-of-home bent from the propagation of the out-of-home industry in the UK. So interesting comparisons between the two. Not to say one is right or the other is right, but the dollars that are coming and the revenue that's coming in the US as you get to more shopper-targeted networks are certainly higher. When we look at the four major categories of retail media networks, online and mobile, all quite well known. When you go to where the opportunity is with in-store digital and streaming and OTT, those are the highest growth categories and have the largest future revenue potential. So where is their growth? Most of the online has been maximized within the networks today. You'll continue to see growth, but it will grow with trend on shopping. Mobile, same thing. In-store digital and streaming are the two very aggressive growth categories and where there is substantial new revenue for the retail sector. Specifically, when we talk about streaming, when you look at now the monetization of streaming that's coming in, you'll see Netflix, Amazon, all the streaming services going to ad-sponsored opportunities. You can target consumers and consumer interest in those streaming networks as brand new real estate. So think of, as a retailer, the ability to make money from your customer sitting at home on their couch, watching a streaming service. That's a new targetable, addressable media opportunity. So when you look at the trend to be able to say, better, worse, who's doing more around it. If I look at UK and EU retailers, as a percentage, the media ad revenue is roughly 1/2 to 1/3 what we see in the same category class retailers in the US. So where do I stretch more dollars? Where do I find more opportunity within UK retailers to increase those numbers because they're material? If I use Walmart as an example, retail media is less than 2% of all of the sales of Walmart, but it's roughly 16% of their profitability. That's now in every C-level suite on radar to say, hey, this is a very small category, but extremely high margin and an area of growth in a business of pennies. The fundamental issue, UK and EU retailers still think of networks as impression-based networks. When you're thinking about the CPGs, the FMCGs that you work with, think about how you can deliver deeper data and more data into those environments that then drives up rates and makes these conversion networks. In an online or a mobile environment, you can convert, that's great. In that retail environment, how do I bring those online metrics into the store and make that trackable, convertible, and give insight around that for the brand customer? So some examples of 1.0 in-store networks today. All very common use cases, those standard impression networks. In those standard impression networks, it's good. It works, it's convertible, everyone understands it, but it's sold under a digital out-of-home metric. So you're paying for eyeballs when you're an FMCG, and you're at a 6 to 12 pound average across those impressions. When you go into sensor and 2.0 retail media network environments, the Gen 2 networks, in those environments, there's a couple of key things to understand about sensors. The first one is cameras and computer vision are dead. So you'll hear some in industry talk about camera, dead. Biometrically around the world, it is now being restricted more and more and more. So any strategy relative to sensor and consumer insights cannot be based on cameras, no longer feasible. In the US, 12 out of 50 states, all of Canada, 100%. Consumer images are considered biometrically private. Second, every digital display is a sensor capture point. So wherever you have a display, and I'm an IT nerd, I apologize in advance, but every one of those points is a point where I can capture data about the customer, about their journey. And how do you capture that data in a biometrically private environment? You put a tag on a cart, trolley, or basket. So I can track that consumer through that environment. I'm not tracking that consumer, I'm tracking the basket, I'm tracking the trolley, which you, the retailer, own. So you can go around the biometric privacy points by tracking objects that you know in your retail environment and then matching them back at the end of the journey to that customer's loyalty point. And finally, building audiences to rival click-through web metrics in real time and being able to drive up premium of those advertising impressions, of those conversion metrics. All of the data that's captured in store can be rendered back to brands real time. You have absolute transparency, absolute conversion. You have a tremendous data set in store that cannot be made artificially, that cannot be faked because it's real-time data, and giving that back to FMCG is a very appealing point because they get direct vision into the shopper. So understanding those sensors, what does that look like on a sensor point? Locators and ceiling, asset tags on devices, and footfall counters. What I can do with that is to be able to track a shopper's path throughout the store. In tracking that path precisely through the store, you can build very precise audiences. I go into the store, these are the categories that I shop, these are the points of interest. Now you as a retailer will say, well, I know that from what they buy, 100%. You have first-party data that's unassailable, but you don't know what I looked at and I didn't buy. Do I walk into an electronics environment and say, hey, I really want to buy that large screen TV, I'm going to go look at that for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, but I'm not walking out with that today. The fact that I showed interest in that is monetizable back to the consumer electronics brands. Where can I build out more precise information about that customer for direct conversion from an advertising perspective, number one. Number two, where can I learn more about how to serve my customer better? You know when they checked out of the store, you don't know how long they were in there. You don't know the categories that they shopped but did not buy. If I know you're interested in a particular category, then that can be retargeted on mobile, on .com, and on in-store with precise targeting in-store to be able to say, did you not buy because of price? Did you not buy because of selection? How can I test and go deep with that data set? I'd challenge every retailer in the group to say, think of that store as the most data intensive opportunity, and you know what a customer does online with every click, everything they looked at, everything they went through. bring that same visibility in store on the sensor side, and you can then micro-target or hyper-target that customer both in store and through other types of media. What does that ultimately do? If I use that in-store layout as an example, one of our large customers in the US uses that in their in-store media network today to target what are my highest CPM corners, what are my best rates, where's my highest footfall. So they reorganize their store and reorganize their media network on that traffic and render back to their advertisers, here's where my customers are going. And then start to build out those micro audiences. On the concept of micro audiences, think about using in-store data to build audience profiles and subgroups that you can then retarget in-store, online, and at home. With that data, I can match that path data to point of sale data, and then you can start to build those audiences from the in-store data to give that closed loop analytic point back to FMCG. You want to hit consumers with the new baby who shop the store twice a week and spend an hour in store, here's your target audience. I'll use an example in one of our large grocery customers in the US, Peloton, the bike and health company, wants to know organic shoppers. Now this particular retail customer doesn't have a great organic section, but they have shoppers that go into that area. How do we build out a micro audience of all of the shoppers there? So this grocer is making money by retargeting consumers at home for health equipment. Some examples of retail media experiences with particular sensors within to be able to detect those customers and tie them back. If I use that in a specific health customer that we have in the US, this particular shopper goes in, looks at diabetes meters and information around a very particular sale. It's a deep sale, it's a consultative sale. In this particular customer environment, there's not a whole lot of staff in store. So this customer went in, looked at it, she dwelled there for 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, didn't convert, didn't buy. Well, maybe I have more questions, and maybe I want more information about it. Maybe I need additional detail. But it's a very high margin category for the manufacturers. We match when she checks out in store her basket information with her loyalty ID, and then she's at home watching television on streaming and retargeting of diabetes testing equipment that she was looking at in store on the at home at an incredibly high CPM. So bringing that in-store behavior to the home, this in the streaming environment, completely new sector. In these conversion networks and the conversion metrics, instead of in an impression network where I'm at a 6 to 12 CPM, in a conversion network that can be driven to a 15 to 80 pound CPM. So it's all about how do I give more data to get more rate on that conversion. I'll use a specific retail example of a customer that we have in the EU. They target in their networks ultra high net worth individuals. So it's petrol, and they look at cars. If you pull into that petrol station in a supercar, anything 100,000 pound or more, there's a 2,400 euro CPM on that customer. Why? Because they get super precise in that use case to say these are the exact people that I'm looking at. And that advertiser is American Express. So very, very highly targeted towards that. I want to talk to the ultra wealthy person on the move. If you would have told me years ago you could get a 2,400 CPM in media, I'd tell you you're insane, no possible chance, but it's out there. So in summary, when you look at your networks, think about giving more to get more. The smarter the in-store network is, the more data you have, the more you can drive rate on that network. Think of it as a deep data environment. Think of it as driving better results. Every FMCG, every CPG we talk to is interested in ROAS. How do I get more confirmation of the return on my advertising spend with that deep data from in-store? Who's looking, how long they're looking, building micro audiences. That's a new opportunity for sure. Use the sensors to drive better customer experiences and learn how to serve those customers better. You see more customer self-identification now at the beginning of the journey. That could be the self-checkout, guns. That could be scanning in on a cart when I'm in that environment. With that information tied back to loyalty, you can then target that customer all along her journey to say, maybe she buys on price, maybe she buys on eco-footprint, maybe she buys on sourcing. Then I can truly have that minority report moment in store where as I'm walking through the store, every message is targeting to my particular taste or catering to my particular interests. And then third, that deep data is the difference between out-of-home and retail media networks. If you're leveraging that data and driving that network success, again, don't think of these as purely impression networks. Think of them as conversion networks. When we're talking to CPGs, FMCGs, US specifically, we're getting a hard push where they're saying, please show me retailers that can give me more data from the in-store experiences. We FMCG will pay for that. We want to sponsor that. The demand we do see from the brand side has to match with the retailer's ability to provide that data back, but there is demand, there is monetization, there is opportunity there. With that, questions?
Sorry, I didn't quite understand how you link the picking up a basket with a sensor back to their loyalty data.
Yes, great question. So how do I tie that back? I'm using that basket all through the journey. At the end, when I check out, in any customer that has loyalty, that customer is self-identifying through the loyalty program at checkout, and I have a sensor at checkout that then data matches back to that customer. And then that customer goes to an ID on our side where we build persona around the customer for 1 journey, 10 journeys, 100 journeys, feed that back into the retailer's loyalty program so you can give that persona information back on a particular shopper.
Hi, Dean Harris from the Co-op. I was interested in how you'd actually tag the store. So Co-op, we've got 2,500 shops. They've all got different layouts or different ranging, because presumably the basket has to relate to what's on the fixture so you can understand what they looked at, didn't look at. How do you approach that huge data linking task?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, which is in that retail store environment, I grid that out with sensors, and then I match that against a planogram for the store. So knowing how that aisle is laid out, what products are on that aisle from planogram, and then matching that back to sensor. And in a sensor environment, you can get down to 1/3 of a meter in terms of accuracy. So I know not only you're in aisle 6, but I know exactly where you were in that aisle, what you looked at. Did you just walk through or did you dwell? So you're taking, in our use case, 6 or 7 tracks a second on where that consumer is and where that consumer is headed.
Fascinating stuff, Chris. When you're uncovering those kind of insights, how do you know whether to sort of approach it with the retailer as an opportunity to run a better store, or approach it as an opportunity to make money by selling better advertising and do those things ever conflict?
It's a great question. So in a retailer's environment, once you start to look at that floor as a data lab and an opportunity, the data that comes off of it to store operations, to staffing, to retail layout, to retail media teams, there's data that's valuable kind of all across the business. We find, and the particular customer I was speaking of in the US is H-E-B in Texas, so 250,000, 300,000 square foot mega grocery environments. They actually started to optimize and change their layouts based on traffic data, and then started to build personas to say, based on the type of customer coming in between these hours, how do I better staff? How do I staff particular departments based on destination? So the insights of data above and beyond the media side are super interesting and super compelling. In that media piece, having that media to be able to render back to the store media teams as well as merchant teams then allows you to drive better arguments, but it's a data set that can be used by multiple use cases within.
Are any UK retailers currently doing this? Do you have coverage in the UK market?
We do have coverage in the UK market, yes. 2 large retailers. We tend not to discuss in-market specifics, so as not to give away competitive advantage.
You can't specify which 2 retailers?
I'm sorry?
You can't disclose which 2 retailers?
I can't. 1 apparel, 1 grocery.
Okay. And what sort of coverage do you have within those retailers? So what proportion of their store estate are you actually collecting data from?
Yeah, it's a great question. So 1 is a full fleet within. The other is 10% of fleet, so they're doing insights and then taking that to all stores. So we'll see some customers that will say, I want to look at my store footprint. Maybe I have large centers, I have metro centers, I have convenience. So I want to do a subset of each. I want to learn from those and then take it into my larger fleet in terms of what I've learned. In the going full fleet with sensors, that usually comes to an absolute personalization strategy. I think where the market is going, and I say think as opposed to know, but as you see more customer identification at the beginning of that journey, you're likely to see in the next 1, 3, 5 years more customer participation of some form of scan-in or self-identification at the beginning of the journey, and then customized messages, customized offers all throughout that journey on the digital displays within. So in our strategy where we drive those digital displays and then we're tying the sensors back, how do I, as a customer, get that kind of concierge level service? How do you target towards my taste? How do you target towards what I want? In store, the same way you would if I were profiled online, and in the online environment, you're making suggestions, you know me, you know my points of interest.
Super, super fascinating. I just wanted to understand how you deal with the point of accuracy. So we're seeing that store stuff are being stripped out of stores, products are being put in places where maybe the planogram doesn't suggest.
Yep.
Promotions are changing every 3 weeks, sometimes every 6 weeks. How do you ensure that the scanning and then the data that is delivered to us, the brands, or to the retailers, is accurate to drive those insights?
Great question. So anytime you're resetting a store, it can be a challenge that you have to then know, hey, there's a planogram reset, now we have to update this data. I'll use Sam's Club, one of our customers. It's a little bit overly nerdy, but somewhat fascinating. They have these automated tenant floor scrubbers. So on the automated tenant floor scrubbers that drive through the store, we hook cameras to those, and then we're capturing images of all the products each night to update the planogram automatically on an ongoing basis. So I think you'll see more and more, A, I'd love to have perfect planogram information from the stores, but B, as you're seeing service automation points of things as simple as a floor scrubber, equipping those to update the planogram is really an interesting use case to then drive that accuracy.
Thank you very much.